We're talking today about one of the most powerful things in the world, in the universe, if you like. It's incredibly powerful, these things. And those, we're talking about talking. We're talking about words today. We're talking about communication. You and I must never underestimate the impact our words can have on other people. I mean, we know this often, but it's far greater than we often think. Our words can do so much good, but they can also do so much harm. They inflict so much damage. The Bible has so much to say about words. I don't know if you've ever done a study of words or speaking or talking in the Bible, but the Bible in so many places has so much to say about what we say and how we say it. The Bible talks about the reason there's so many things about words in the Bible or talking is because of the importance of words, how important they are in everyday life, in our relationships, the power of words. But also, we so often misuse words and hurt people, hurt relationships. So the Bible talks a lot about it. In fact, we are going to look today at a record 17 texts, 17 different texts today. I haven't done that many ever, but it's because there's so much about it. This is the tip of the iceberg we'll look at today, but I've just picked prayerfully a whole lot that might be able to speak to us and help us, because this is an area I think is a challenge to so many of us to want to say the right thing. Our God is a speaking God, and we are his image bearers. We are the people on earth. So he really wants us. His desire is that we listen to what he says and that we say things that reflect him, that honor him as his image bearer. So I'm going to look at how powerful words are. Proverbs 12:18 and Proverbs 18:21. The words of the reckless pierce like swords, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. And then the tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit. Just think for a moment, and some of you may have experienced this, the cruel words of an unthinking parent, the damage that can inflict on a child, and how it affects them. Some of them temporarily, some for the rest of their lives. I've sat with many people that have talked to me and said, my mother said this, my father said that, and they've never got over it. Think about that. Think of the number of relationships, marriage relationships. Think of, all types of work relationships that have been damaged or hurt or enhanced by words. It makes such a big difference. It is huge. And words have also, according to this, cost lives. Well, of course they have. It's a few words that declare war, and wars cost lives. Words have led to people taking their own lives, suicide. Words have led to people murdering other people because they feel aggrieved. They've gone after someone and, if you like, got even or stopped them speaking, if you like. And James, he has if you know chapter 3 of James, it's a sustained talk. Most of the chapter is about talking and the damage it can do. James refers to the tongue as untamable. He talks about a restless evil full of deadly poison. And he goes on to say that the tongue is just almost impossible to control totally, but if you can control it, it's evidence that you're a maturing Christian, you're a mature Christian. No one can control it perfectly. We'll all have our bad days. It may be something we say a bit harshly or something we didn't quite express correctly, but we hope that as Christians, as we grow, we will improve, the way we say things and the way we talk will improve greatly. So the tongue also, these are things it does quite wrong, but it also does a lot of good. It can heal, the Bible says, and give life. Think about how encouraging words are. To say words like, I love you. You're really special to me. You really are good at that. I really appreciate you. Things like that can just change someone's perspective, turn their whole day around. And if we do it consistently and we're kind to people, then we can have an impact on all those around us. So never underestimate, as we begin this morning, the impact our words can have on other people. We need to use our words wisely. So here is our foundational text for this morning. And it's Ephesians 4:29. This is the sort of verse you want to take away and really dissect yourself and think about. But do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. So simply put, all Christians, every one of us, are only to use helpful words, not harmful words. That's going to be our 2 points this morning. Use helpful words, not harmful words. That's the whole story. In other words, we're to use words that build people up, constructive words, have constructive communication and conversations. We're supposed to be helping people with our words that are so powerful, not dragging them down, beating them down. God calls us to be builders, to have those constructive conversations. So we want to begin, though, this morning with where this text begins. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths. We are to avoid harmful talk, and we're going to spend a little bit of time on this. Do not let unwholesome talk come out of your mouth. It's interesting how that word unwholesome is translated in different contexts. It can mean, for example, filthy, putrid. It can be used in reference to withered flowers. It can be used in reference to rancid fish, rotten fruit, all sorts of different ways depending on the context. But in other words, it's so often about something that's disgusting or decomposing, or something that's bad or off, something that stinks. And I couldn't help but think about rancid fish. I enjoy fishing. And I don't know, it seems to me, and this is one of the plagues of New Zealand, that every boat ramp you ever go to, and you walk past those rubbish bins by the boat ramps, the smell is disgusting. I thought maybe in your life groups you can discuss which smells worse, rancid fish or rotting rats. I go for rotting rats. I kill a few around our house. They keep coming around. But that smell. Now, why does this terminology used like this? Why does God use something like this in this text? Well, Paul and ultimately God wants us to realize that these words, these unkind words, these harsh words, these words that are bad, if you like, or unwholesome, are destructive, and they stink. And that we should, that smell when you pass that rubbish bin with the fish that's rotting and go, oh, he wants us to be repulsed. He wants us to just, as it were, just push away and reject revolting, stinky words and keep them out of our lives. And so that is what we want, because he sees them as evil. He sees them as detrimental to people, detrimental to relationships, detrimental to community. So it's something that we should not have. And Paul talks about it both in chapter 4, which we're in, and chapter 5. He talks about words so much when he's talking about the life of Christian, following Christ, growing. Words come up inevitably. Have a look at these couple of texts. Chapter 4, verse 25. Paul writing to the Ephesians, therefore, each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to your neighbor, for we are all members of one body. Don't tell lies. Just don't tell lies. Not even if you think they're small ones, just don't tell lies. There is no place for lying in the Christian life, says God through Paul. It's unwholesome talk. It's something that should not happen. How about John 8:44? I just wanted to talk about lies for a moment, because this is what Jesus said. He's talking to his opponents, and he says, you belong to your father, the devil, and you want to carry out your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning, not holding to the truth, for there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks his native language, for he is a liar and the father of lies. Put that in your minds. Lying is something that is so devilish and evil and so wrong. It's something he does. But think about also, I couldn't help but put my mind and go across to Judas. Judas' entire time with Jesus was a lie. He was a deceiver. He lied to everybody. He put on this fake thing that I'm one of you. I'm part of you. But all the time, he was this other person within. Instead, he pretended to care about people, but he was stealing money. So his life was a lie. And these are people, well, beings, the devil and Judas. Clearly, when we lie, we're not imitating God. We're very much standing on the wrong side of things. And so we're to speak truthfully. The Bible's very clear about that. So that Ephesians chapter 4 talks about not lying, telling the truth, speaking, don't be deceitful, don't try and, make yourself look better or whatever, using things. We got to be careful. But also then in the next chapter, chapter 5, Paul says this, in verses 4 and 5, but among you there must not be even a hint. Okay, so everything said from now on is even a hint of this happening in the Christian community. But among you there must not be even a hint of sexual immorality or any kind of impurity or of greed, because these are improper for God's holy people. If we're holy, if we're set apart to God, we should have changed and be changing. Nor should there be obscenity, foolish talk, coarse joking, which are out of place, but rather thanksgiving. What we learn here is that it is totally inappropriate, totally unworthy of us to be crude and rude, to tell those dirty jokes, to even listen and laugh sometimes. And we've got to resist that. We've got to stop it running through our minds and definitely stop it coming out of our mouths. It's unworthy. It's offensive to God. It's insulting and disrespectful to God, unworthy of us as Christians. I don't know if you've experienced this, and I said this to someone the other day, and they said, I've noticed the same thing. I have a couple of good mates that are in another church, Christian community, and they have, in the last 3 or 4 years, started to add swearing in their sentences. And I'm going, where is this coming from? If this is a trend of some kind, please don't join the trend. It's not cool. It is offensive to God for us to use words that are coarse or crude or whatever. So please, let's just stay away from that and definitely avoid it at all costs. So what other types of things are objectionable to God? What other types of talk or words offend him? Well, I thought this is a bit, I don't know, over the top maybe, but I thought I'd throw some of these up and you can have a look. Hopefully you can see them. I realize they're quite small. I have to fit them on the page. But speaking of which, I can't turn my page. But here's a... You're just testing me to see if I'm all right. I'll start reading the list, and let's all sing. Oh, no. Hold a second. Okay. All right, let's move with this. That was just to see who was watching. I'm just seeing if anyone's asleep. No, okay, good. Abusive language, that when you humiliate someone or you try and ridicule and mock them. Or careless words. Jesus said that we'll be held accountable for every idle word we speak. Angry, bitter words, blaming, hateful, cruel words, threatening, intimidating. I'm just throwing lots in. Mean-spirited words. We're very small-minded and negative and that sort of stuff. Put-downs, insults, mocking, ridicule. We treat people with contempt by the way we talk. Sarcasm, sneering or cutting remarks. Before I became a Christian, that was my go-to. I'd make sarcastic remarks about so many things and people. Unfair and harsh criticism, quick cutting comments, scornful words, cheap verbal shots, condemning others, manipulative words, exaggerating the faults of others. They do something wrong, so we make a big deal out of it. And it's just cruel. Exaggerating the faults of others, blasphemy, irreverent words, slander, spreading false things about people. It just isn't right. Gossip, name-calling, verbal abuse disguised as jokes, false accusations, imputing bad motives, yelling and screaming. These are just some of the things. There's so many that we could go on for quite some time, but I was sitting just before and I noted in my notes, and a lot of these, not all of them, go for online as well, or in texts, or tweets, or emails. We have to be so careful, not just with the spoken words, but also nowadays in our culture, not first century culture so much, we have to be careful how we send our messages and everything. We'll continue with this and talk about it. So I'm going to say this as a sort of application as we go along. Years ago, I realize that this list is not comprehensive. I mean, there are other things too, but it's such a challenge for us that I was really seeking, how can I be nicer to people, more loving, more kind, and avoid saying things that were hurtful and harmful. And I came across this text, and so I'm just handing it on to you, because this is a text I pray. I use this if I'm, feeling like I've got to be careful in this situation, or this, and I've adopted this prayer of David. It says, Psalm 141, verse 3, set a guard over my mouth, Lord, keep watch over the door of my lips. I don't know about you, but I just sort of see this castle with guards, or the temple with temple guards, and protecting, and what he's saying is, Lord, don't let me say the wrong thing. Help me to only say nice things, not harmful things. And so I memorized this verse, and it's something that if I'm going into a situation with a very aggressive person, I'm going into a situation where it's very inflammatory or difficult, or I'm dealing with someone that I find hard to like. I like almost everybody, that there are people that sometimes this is a prayer. I say, Lord, just control my lips. Don't let anything come out, angry talk or whatever. So the Holy Spirit is the one that guards our lips and keeps us from harmful talk. It's a daily battle, by the way. Some of us don't even realizing we're doing it. The way we talk to our spouse, the way we talk to our friends, the way we talk to our children. All of this, put a guard so I don't say the wrong thing. But now we're going to go to the book of Proverbs. And we're going to go through a whole set of Proverbs that speak about this. We could go through a whole different set, but these are some of the really, ones that really stood out as I was studying this week. So Proverbs 16:28 and Proverbs 17:9. A perverse person stirs up conflict, and a gossip separates close friends. Whoever would foster love covers over an offense, but whoever repeats a matter separates close friends. I wanted to get those ones out there because notice how our words can destroy other people's relationships as well as our own. We can say things and do things that hurt other relationships as well as ours. A perverse person is someone who's attracted to arguments, loves to debate. I actually met a guy at university all those years ago that he claimed he was a Christian, and all he wanted to do all day was argue with me about all sorts of things. And I actually got quite tired of it, and in the end I just said, stop, I don't want to do this anymore. You're just drawing me into all sorts of arguments. That's not where I want to go with my life and my interaction with you. These sorts of perverse people are very quick to criticize everyone else, criticize what you think, criticize your views or whatever. So what they do is, instead of uniting the Christian community or wherever, the workplace, they divide it. Instead of strengthening friendships, they weaken them. A slanderer, a gossip, is someone who destroys relationships by repeating a matter. Often gossip's not even true, but a slanderer will say something often that, that they shouldn't have said. They've repeated something. We shouldn't even repeat something once if we're not supposed to, but to go around and tell other people is really, really wrong. You imagine that, someone repeats something that you've said that was private. We're going to talk about this a bit more in a second. And then they repeat it, and it destroys your relationship with another person. You made a comment about someone, their new haircut looks like Donald Trump. And they've gone and told that person, it's something that they shouldn't have said, but it was in private. We're not to repeat it. Proverbs 11:13. A gossip betrays a confidence, but a trustworthy person keeps a secret. Gossips love to chatter about the latest thing and have you heard and did you know, and it's about other people or about other things going on and rumors and stories, and talk about other people and criticize their lives and cut them up and say all sorts of things about them. But we must never share other people's confidences. One of the big rules, every week we invite people to go out to the prayer room and pray. One of the biggest rules about being in that prayer room is you must never repeat what you hear in this room unless you have a person's okay on it. Because we don't want gossips going in there and sharing what someone has secretly told them, confidentially told them, and then come out and go, you know what, I just prayed with old such and such, and they said this. So gossips need not apply for the job of being. So everyone that goes in that room, I check every name of the person that goes in that room to make sure that they're not someone who's got a reputation for revealing secrets or confidences or telling people. So a trustworthy person. So in general, but especially in situations like that, we need people who are trustworthy. We need to be people who can hold our tongues and not say, when it comes up in conversation, we're still holding back and we don't say things that were told us in confidence. Someone has said, there are times when the best gift of speech is silence. Just don't repeat it. Just keep it quiet. Proverbs 18:23. Whoever rebukes a person will in the end gain favor, rather than one who has a flattering tongue. So we're talking about flattery now. You know, there's people that always want to, especially if they sort of idolize someone, they talk them up, they say things, they want to be their friend, so they exaggerate how good this person is. They say all sorts of things to manipulate, to flatter, to get them to like them or do something for them, to influence them. We mustn't do that. You know, you want someone to do something, so you start saying all sorts of things you don't really believe about them, nice things, so they'll do it for you. That's flattery, and that's not something that we should do. It's unhelpful. It's harmful. We don't want to behave like that. We don't want to say things that manipulate other people. And we don't want to hurt them and influence badly. But we do want to have, sometimes, here we go, a person rebukes a person. So there are times when saying something to correct someone or help them, pointing out a wrong, is helpful. Now, I'm not talking about people who are always critical. I can think of a few people in my mind that they're always criticizing, they're always saying negative things. They're not coming from a loving perspective, they're coming from an arrogant perspective where they think they're better than you. And I see this in marriages, when one thinks they're better than the other and they're always complaining about, oh, you're always wrong this, you're always wrong that. And that comes from a wrong place. We're talking about rebuking here as someone who is trying to help someone on their way, who truly loves them and is saying to them, hey, look, I really need to talk to you about this because I think it's become an issue, something we need to talk about. That is a good thing. In the short term, the person may be offended. In the long term, hopefully, they will gain from that and they will look back and go, well, actually, in the end, I'm really thankful that you said that because it helped me get back on track or whatever. I can only think of one situation where this is not true. I don't know about you, but of all the things I can think about where you go to someone and you offer correction, I can only think of one time it's not true or not useful, and that is when you say it to a preacher after he's preached. So just so you know, that's inappropriate and not Christian at all. Preachers are always, no, I'm not right. No, but you know what, let's move on quickly. But you know, it's hard to take, isn't it, sometimes when someone comes and corrects you. Over the years, it's every so often someone's come and said, did you realize, or hey, I'd love to talk to you. But when it comes from a heart of love, it's a lot easier to take. In fact, look at this next verse, Proverbs 9:8. Do not rebuke mockers or they will hate you. Rebuke the wise and they will love you. So I'm encouraging us to, if we're ever going to say something to someone, may it be loving and constructive and help them deal with what they're doing wrong. And then if we're that person that's made a mistake and we've done something wrong or said something wrong, may we be able to be humble enough to accept that constructive criticism and move on from them. Because it says the wise, they will understand and they will love you for it. They will see it as constructive and helpful. Comes down to attitude, comes down how we treat people, whether we truly love them or whether we're just very critical, have a critical spirit. So there's far more we can say about harmful talk. We're going to leave all that behind and we're going to just talk for just a short time about helpful talk, about using helpful talk. And this is the verse that, again, I'm sharing a little bit of my journey with this because it's not easy to always get your words right. So this is James 1:19. It says this: "My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone, every Christian, should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry." Darrell Bock wrote this. And Darrell Bock's coming to speak at Winter Bible School soon. He's from Dallas Theological over in the States. But he says this: "The truly wise and godly person in Scripture is not the one who always has something to say." See that? The truly wise, truly godly is not the one that always has something to say, but the person who listens to others, prayerfully considers, and only then speaks in measured tones. See, for years, especially when I was a younger Christian, this was also one of the verses that I trained myself to look at because I figured I needed a lot of help with this. Quick to listen, slow to speak. Take it in, listen, then speak. Don't just, and I've said to you before, sometimes because I've studied a particular topic or whatever, I'm quick to answer what I think a person's talking about, but not genuinely solving their problem. I should have listened longer. And when I do counseling, I tend to, and others in this room who do counseling stuff, I tend to make the first hour or so when we meet just listening. So I understand and build a picture, and so I can actually be useful rather than leaping on a comment near the beginning and talking about that when it's not the real issue. So I think it's hugely beneficial for us to be good listeners, quick to listen. So you think about it when you're going into a meeting, when you're entering into a conversation, when you're having a heavy conversation with your spouse about something that is really important. Listen and process and pray, then talk. I've told you before, this is a little bit silly, but before I get on the phone's ringing, not so much lately, but I used to pray before I picked up the phone because I didn't want to say anything wrong. You didn't know who's on the other end. Being a pastor, you can get someone saying, "My husband's just done this, my wife's just done this, someone's just passed away." So you pick up, so I pray, "Lord, I just pray that you would guide my words and may I listen," and then I pick it up and talk. Well, there was this time I was really tired, which is pretty standard, and I picked up the phone, and I didn't pray before I picked it up. I picked it up and went, "Dear Lord, I just pray that as I talk to this person, that you would help me say," and they go, "Excuse me?" I go, sorry, it's Andrew, sorry. So I should have listened rather than talked. But anyway, we can all be too quick to speak and not listen. And that's we've got to be careful of that. So let's go back to our foundational verse. And we're just going to take a few things out of this and move on to a couple more things that are positive and encouraging and helpful, and then we'll finish. So I think that Paul probably had those words of quick to speak, not those exact words, but in his mind when he wrote this foundational verse for what we're doing. Ephesians 4:29, "Do not let any unwholesome words talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building up others." Listen to that. "According to their needs, that it may benefit those that listen." How do you know what their needs are if you haven't listened to them first? You have to listen to the person, think about, hey, look, I think given what you've said. So it's listening and according to their needs, answering. So we have to observe, we have to listen, we have to understand what's going on in a person's life before we can say the right words to encourage them, affirm them, to help them. So quick to listen, slow to speak. And what do we speak? Well, here's some different things you can do. Probably one of the most famous verses about how to talk to people. "A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger." This is one of the most useful verses to remember in the Bible. We're talking about a potentially heated conversation taking place, and someone's just said something perhaps inflammatory, something hurtful, something that's just got you wound up. How do you respond? You go back and you tell them what you think of them? Do you turn around and tell them what you think of their how they're dressed, or how do you react? Well, you show restraint, you calm down, you just cool down, and instead of an inflammatory response, you get a gentle response, a soft response, a soothing response, a kind response, some sort of a response that diffuses it. There are times we have to stand there, and we do have to stand for something, but so much of the time it's just our feelings bubbling up instead of standing for something righteous or good. We have to have some sort of gentle response, and that will deflate things, that will take away the anger, and hopefully get that relationship back on track. If you just think for a second, in the Bible, who was it that had a gentle answer that saved a very inflammatory situation? It's a woman called Abigail. David was off to murder Nabal, and he was on his way. Nabal means fool. He was a foolish man. David was off to take him out, to murder him, and not just him. And Abigail came with gentle words, and she spoke to him the most, very intelligent, thought out, prayerfully put together, no doubt, words, and diffused the whole situation. So I encourage you to be one of those people. Be someone who uses words in a way that diffuses, not creates more problems. Proverbs 12:25. This is important. Anxiety weighs down the heart, but a kind word cheers it up. That word anxiety means basically a person suffering from extreme emotional stress. This is someone who's really anxious, really at the point where whatever it is that's confronting them or is crushing them, and they're just weighed down, and they're to the point of being overwhelmed. And it says, come to them and use kind words and cheer them up. We have a huge responsibility to use words well, to build people up, to rescue people, to help people, especially people who are anxious. This is like bringing someone back from the brink of depression through our words. And this one, gracious words have a similar effect. Proverbs 16:24, gracious or pleasant words are a honeycomb, sweet to the soul and healing to the bones. So it's saying that honey is not just sweet to taste. Most medicine's disgusting. I could go for hours about how disgusting medicine is. I used to have to take malaria pills when I was a little boy in Singapore. When we went to Malaysia and on holiday, had to take malaria pills. So my parents always put it in jam so that I would have it, because it was so bitter. It would make me, always feel a bit. So they'd give it to me in the jam. I always tasted it. I was always sick. So for years, when we went to holiday in Malaysia, I was never immune or protected from malaria, but didn't get it, praise the Lord, because I could never take the bitterness of the pill. Well, here it's saying that honey is both sweet and good to restore and to give energy and to encourage and to heal and that sort of thing. So gracious words are like that. They are healing, they are restorative, and they're nice, and people just enjoy them, and they're strengthened and helped by them, and their emotional troubles and hurts are helped by what we say. So this morning, that's really the message, that we use not harmful words, we avoid them, but we use helpful words. All kinds of words that encourage, build up, constructive, helpful, kind words, gentle words, pleasant words. So I want to leave us with one final verse, and this verse is very telling. I'm warning you now, it really speaks to the heart of all this, and we're going to see why. It's Jesus, the only person that always said good things and right things every single time. He said this as a warning in Luke 6:45. A good man brings good things out of the good stored up in his heart, and an evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in his heart. For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. Think about that. What we say is a reflection of what's going on inside us, of who we really are. So if we're saying those critical and cruel things, if we're saying angry things, if we're not being gentle, if we're not saying things from a loving, kind perspective, if we're all that says there's something going on in here that's wrong, that needs to be worked on, needs to be fixed, needs to be addressed. Our mouths don't act independently. When the Bible says our mouths do this, and it's a reflection of who we are inside. Our words reveal our hearts. What do your words say about you? What do my words say about me? So Jeremy's going to come now.